You already know what an angel looks like. But the Bible describes 7 different kinds of angels, and each one does exactly one job. Gabriel announces. Michael fights. Cherubim guard the throne. Seraphim worship. The angel of the Lord speaks with God's own voice. The destroyer executes. The patrol riders report. 7 figures, 7 assignments. In the entire Bible, not one of them ever does another's job. Not once. Most people picture a single generic thing when they hear the word angel. Tall, robed, feathered wings, maybe a halo. You've seen it your entire life. On Christmas cards, in church paintings, in nativity scenes. You've absorbed it for so long it feels like a fact. That image is hiding the system. And once you see the system, every angelic appearance in Scripture starts to read differently. Start with the most famous one. Gabriel. The Bible has never once described Gabriel with wings. He appears 4 times in the entire Bible. Twice in Daniel, twice in Luke. In Daniel, Daniel sees him and says he looked like a man. That's the description. A man. In Luke, the text doesn't describe his form at all. Not his face, not his height, not his wings. 4 appearances, 0 feathers. Every wing you have ever seen on Gabriel was painted on after the fact. Painted on from where? Early Christian art took the wings from 2 places. From the cherubim and seraphim inside the Bible, who do have wings the text actually describes, and which we'll get to, and from Greco-Roman winged messenger figures outside the Bible, like the goddess of victory, whose feathered wings were the ancient Mediterranean shorthand for a divine messenger. Painters fused it all together and called the result Gabriel. But the text gives him the job and nothing else. A man named Zechariah is in the Jerusalem temple, alone at the incense altar, doing his work. Then something is in the room with him. Luke chapter 1 verse 12 says he was troubled, and that fear fell upon him. He doesn't speak first. The figure speaks. I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you. That's Luke chapter 1 verse 19. And that sentence isn't a greeting. It's a job title. Gabriel is telling Zechariah exactly what he is, and exactly what he was made to do. He wasn't sent because something needed protecting. He wasn't sent because a battle was happening. He was sent because a specific message needed to be delivered to a specific person. That's the whole assignment. The Hebrew word the Old Testament uses for angel is malach. It doesn't describe a type of creature. It describes a function. It means the one who is sent. And Gabriel, in the very first sentence he ever speaks with his name attached, tells you what he was sent to do. Here's the thing about Gabriel. In the entire Bible, that is all he ever does. He appears 4 times, twice in Daniel and twice in Luke. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 16, he's sent to help Daniel understand a vision. In Daniel chapter 9, verses 21 through 23, he arrives again to interpret another vision, and the text says he was sent the moment Daniel began to pray. In Luke chapter 1, verse 19, he announces to Zechariah. In Luke chapter 1, verse 26, he delivers the Annunciation to Mary, the announcement that she will carry Jesus. 4 appearances, 4 messages, every single time, a specific person, a specific announcement, a specific thing that is about to happen. Not once does Gabriel fight. Not once does he guard anything. He arrives, delivers, and leaves. Think about what that means for a second. The Bible doesn't describe a single category called angel. It describes a structured workforce. And once you understand what each type was assigned to do, every angelic appearance in Scripture starts to look completely different. Gabriel is the first name on the roster, but he's not the most famous one. The archangel most people would name is Michael. And Michael has never delivered a message to a human being. Not once. Not anywhere in the Bible. So if Gabriel is the one who stands in God's presence and is sent to speak, what has Michael been doing every single time he appears? Gabriel identified himself as the one sent to speak. Michael has never once delivered a message to a human being in the Bible. Every time Michael appears, something is already at war. The first time Michael is named is in Daniel chapter 10, verse 13. An unnamed heavenly figure has been trying to reach Daniel. He tells Daniel that the prince of Persia had opposed him for 21 days. Then Michael arrived. Not to explain anything, not to deliver news, he came to contend. The text calls him one of the chief princes. Think about that for a second. Michael's very first biblical appearance is in the middle of a supernatural conflict that had been ongoing for 3 weeks before Daniel even knew about it. He appears again in Daniel chapter 10, verse 21, described as the one who contends alongside the heavenly messenger against opposing forces. In Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, he's called the great prince who has charge of your people. That's a military designation, a commander, not a courier. In the letter of Jude, verse 9, Michael disputes with Satan over the body of Moses. He doesn't argue theology. He doesn't lecture. He invokes the Lord's authority and contends. And in Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 through 9, Michael leads the angelic army that casts Satan and his angels out of heaven entirely. He runs the military operation. In every single appearance, Michael is in a conflict. He has never announced a birth. He has never explained a vision. He has never comforted a frightened human. If you have ever assumed that all angels are basically interchangeable, that any one of them could fill in for any other, the named figures in the biblical text have already complicated that idea in a very specific way. Gabriel announces and has never fought. Michael fights and has never announced. 2 named angels in the Protestant Bible. 2 completely opposite assignments. Neither one has ever done what the other does. But Michael and Gabriel aren't the figures most people picture when they hear the word angel. The beings most people visualize, the ones on Christmas cards and nativity scenes, are the cherubim. And what the Bible actually describes when it names a cherub is so far from that image that it changes almost everything about how you read the passages that mention them. There's a figure in the Bible that appears more than Gabriel and more than Michael, stationed at the entrance to Eden, crafted onto the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, forming the living throne beneath God himself in Ezekiel's vision. This figure has 4 faces, 4 wings, hooves like a calf, and human hands. It's called a cherub. You've seen this word used for something else your whole life. The cherubim enter the biblical narrative in Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. God places them at the east entrance of the garden to guard the way to the tree of life, alongside a flaming sword that turns every direction. That's the assignment. Guard, not announce, not fight a named adversary. Stand at the entrance and keep what's behind it protected. When God instructs Moses to build the Ark of the Covenant in Exodus chapter 25, he commands 2 golden cherubim crafted onto the mercy seat, which is the lid of the ark, with their wings spread upward and inward over it. And God says he will speak from between them. The cherubim are the architectural form of the divine presence on earth. They're not decorations. They're the throne. Then, there's Ezekiel's vision. In Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel describes 4 living creatures. Each has 4 faces: a human face, a lion's face, an ox's face, and an eagle's face. Each has 4 wings. Their legs are straight, and their feet are like a calf's hooves, gleaming like burnished bronze. They have human hands beneath their wings. They're set inside wheels, massive spinning wheels within wheels, full of eyes, moving with the Spirit. In chapter 10, Ezekiel confirms explicitly, these are the cherubim. If you have ever read that passage and felt the text was straining to describe something the imagination wasn't built to hold, you were reading it correctly. Ezekiel keeps reaching for comparisons and not quite finding them. He says like and as if again and again. He's describing something that doesn't fit any category he has available. Now compare that to the popular image of the cherub, the soft, round, pink-winged baby. That figure comes not from the Bible, but from ancient Greco-Roman decoration. The Italian Renaissance term for it was putti, a classical artistic motif applied to the word cherub during the Renaissance, without any biblical basis. Art historians note that the visual conflation was entirely artistic, not textual. The painters took the wings from one thing and the baby from another, and called the result a cherub. What the cherubim do in every biblical appearance is the same thing. They guard or carry the presence of God. Stationed at Eden's gate, mounted on the ark, forming Ezekiel's throne chariot. In Solomon's temple, 2 cherubim of olive wood stand 15 feet tall, their wings spanning the full width of the inner sanctuary. Same function everywhere: guard, carry, protect. Not once do the cherubim deliver a message. Not once do they fight a named adversary. Their assignment is singular, and they never leave it. Stop and notice what the pattern is building. Gabriel announces. Michael fights. Cherubim guard the presence of God. 3 categories, 3 functions, 3 lines, none of them cross. But there's a 4th category, described in exactly 1 passage, appearing exactly once in the entire Bible, performing a function nothing else in Scripture is claimed to do. What were the seraphim, and why does the text never use them again? Cherubim appear across the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Seraphim appear in one passage, exactly one. The only description of them in Scripture is Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. And in that passage, they perform two functions and then disappear from the text entirely. Isaiah's vision opens with the Lord seated on a high throne, his robe filling the temple. Above the throne, the seraphim. Each has 6 wings, 2 to cover the face, 2 to cover the feet, 2 for flight. And they're calling to each other continuously. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The text says the doorposts shook at the sound of their voices, the house filled with smoke. The seraphim's cry was powerful enough to cause the building to physically respond. Do you notice what their function is? They're not delivering a message. They're not guarding anything. They're worshiping, continuously, without pause, and the building is shaking. Isaiah's first reaction isn't wonder, it's despair. He says, "Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips." He doesn't reach for praise, he reaches for the awareness of everything that disqualifies him from being in the room. That's a very human response to something overwhelming. Then, one seraph flies to him. It takes a burning coal from the altar with tongs and touches it to Isaiah's lips, and declares him clean. That's the second function, purification. One act, aimed at the exact thing that disqualified Isaiah for the task in front of him. The seraphim don't administer general reassurance. They do the precise thing the moment requires. And then, they step back from the narrative entirely. They don't appear again in the Old Testament under that name. Many interpreters connect the 6-winged creatures who cry, "Holy, holy, holy," in Revelation chapter 4, to Isaiah's seraphim, though the text in Revelation doesn't use the word. Think about how a hospital emergency department works. When a cardiac patient arrives, the hospital doesn't send a general volunteer. It sends a cardiologist, someone trained for exactly that one crisis and no other. When a bone breaks, the surgeon comes. These roles aren't interchangeable. The hospital didn't decide this arbitrarily. It built a structure where specific expertise responds to specific needs. The heavenly world the Bible describes works the same way. Gabriel doesn't show up when a war needs to be fought. Michael doesn't show up to make an announcement. When an angelic figure appears in Scripture, the type of figure is a signal. It tells you exactly what God is doing in that moment, if you know how to read the roster. If you're finding connections in this that you've never seen before, share this with someone who loves digging into the Bible. This is the kind of thing that changes how you read every angelic appearance you'll ever encounter. So far, we've covered 4 of the major angelic categories the Bible describes. Gabriel, the announcer, the being who names his own function, as the one sent to speak, who appears 4 times and delivers a message every single time. Michael, the warrior, the national guardian of Israel, who appears in 5 passages and is fighting in every one of them. Cherubim, the throne guard, the composite 4-faced beings stationed at Eden, at the ark, and beneath the divine throne in Ezekiel's vision, who guard and carry the presence of God and never once deliver a message. And Seraphim, the worship beings, described in one passage only, whose entire known existence is spent in the throne room crying, "Holy, holy, holy," and purifying the one person God needs to speak. 4 categories, 4 functions, 4 boundaries none of them cross. In the second half of this video, we go to the most complex figure in the entire roster, the one who appears more than all of them, the one the Bible keeps almost identifying as God himself. And then to the one figure you will never see coming. Gabriel announces, Michael fights, cherubim guard, seraphim worship. But the figure who appears more than any named angel in the Old Testament has never quite settled into any of those categories. The more carefully you read his scenes, the less certain it becomes that the text is describing an angel at all. Every figure in the roster so far has a clear category and a clear function. Then there is this one. He appears to Hagar, to Abraham, to Moses, to Gideon, to Manoah. More appearances than any named angel in the Old Testament. And in almost every scene, something strange happens. The text starts talking about him as an angel, and then without any explanation, starts talking about him as God. The first time is in Genesis chapter 16. The angel of the Lord appears to Hagar in the wilderness, after she's fled. He speaks to her in the first person with divine authority, and promises her son will become a great nation. Then at the end of the scene, Hagar calls the name of the Lord who spoke to her. Not the angel, the Lord. In Genesis chapter 22, the angel of the Lord stops Abraham from sacrificing Isaac. and he speaks in the first person as God. Now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son from me, not from God, from me. In Exodus chapter 3 verse 2, the angel of the Lord appears in the burning bush. 3 verses later, God called to him out of the bush. No transition, no signal. The text shifts from angel of the Lord to God speaking without any marker indicating a change of speaker. Do you hear what the text is doing there? You're told you're reading about an angel, and then, without any signal at all, you're reading God speaking in the first person. Gideon in Judges chapter 6 has the same experience. The angel of the Lord appears to him under an oak tree, and the conversation slides from the angel of the Lord to the Lord speaking without any indication that the subject has changed. Manoah in Judges chapter 13 asks the figure for his name. The figure says his name is too wonderful. After he ascends in the altar flame, Manoah says, "We shall surely die, for we have seen God." The scholarly debate about this figure is real, and it hasn't been resolved. One reading, common in evangelical Protestant scholarship, identifies the angel of the Lord as a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, meaning an appearance of the Son of God before his birth in Bethlehem, based on the divine authority he exercises and the names applied to him. Another reading treats the blurring as a feature of how ancient texts presented divine messengers. Historians note that in the ancient world, a royal messenger spoke with the king's full authority, and the messenger's words were the king's words legally. In that framework, a divine messenger speaking in God's first person is a function of the commission, not evidence about the messenger's identity. Biblical scholar Michael Heiser has argued, drawing on what he calls the divine council framework, that the angel of the Lord is a distinct figure within the heavenly court, who operates at a level of authority no other figure on the roster possesses. His reading holds that the ancient Hebrew audience would have recognized this figure as occupying a rank so close to the divine that the distinction sometimes collapsed in the telling. Both readings agree on this. The angel of the Lord functions with a kind of authority that none of the other named figures in the roster are given. Not Gabriel, not Michael, and notice what every other role in the roster has in common that his doesn't. Every other assignment keeps a distance between heaven and earth. Gabriel carries a message across it. Michael fights a battle inside it. Cherubim guard a throne behind it. Each function places the figure on one side of a line and what he represents on the other. The angel of the Lord does the opposite. His assignment is to be the point where that distance collapses, where the messenger and the one who sent him become, for that moment, indistinguishable. If Gabriel's job is delivery, the angel of the Lord's job is presence. The blur isn't a failure of the text to categorize him. The blur is the category. If you've ever read The Burning Bush and felt uncertain whether you were reading about an angel or about God himself, you weren't missing something. You were reading exactly what the text was doing. What the person in a scene experiences, whether it's Hagar alone in the wilderness or Moses at the bush, is not a messenger at arm's length. It's presence. That's the assignment. There's still one figure we haven't covered. Unlike the angel of the Lord, this one's identity isn't ambiguous at all. It's never named, never speaks, and appears only when something is about to end. There's a figure, or possibly several figures, who appears at specific moments across the Old and New Testaments, who is never given a name, never speaks a single word, and whose only documented function is to end something. The Bible calls it simply the destroyer. The first appearance is in Exodus chapter 12, verse 23. The Passover. God instructs the Israelites to mark their doorposts with blood, and the reason is specific. The Lord will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. The destroyer is a distinct agent, deployed by God and restrained by blood on a doorpost. It's not God himself passing through. It's something sent. In 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 16, a destroying angel moves through Israel, following David's census. The parallel account in 1 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 16, gives one of the strangest images in the entire Old Testament. The angel is standing between heaven and earth, over Jerusalem, with a drawn sword in his hand. David looks up and sees him, and God says, "Enough." The execution is in pause. The command to stop came before the sword came down. Think about that image for a moment. David is looking at an agent of judgment, suspended mid-action. Not advancing, not retreating. Just there, waiting for the word. The destroyer is a tool deployed by God and restrained by God. It has no independent agenda. It has an assignment. In Acts chapter 12, verse 23, King Herod accepts the worship of a crowd and is immediately struck dead by an angel of the Lord. No speech, no warning. The judgment is immediate and precise. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 10, Paul references the destroyer in the wilderness as a known category his readers should understand. He treats it as an established figure, not a one-off event. Stop and consider that contrast with Gabriel for a second. Gabriel shows up to announce that something is beginning, a birth, a covenant, a new thing entering the world. The destroyer shows up to end something specific. One announces life, the other ends it. And in the biblical record, neither one has ever crossed into what the other does. The roster also includes figures who don't execute anything, but observe everything. In Zechariah chapter 1, angelic patrol riders report to the angel of the Lord on the state of the earth. They've been out, they've observed, they're delivering intelligence. In Zechariah chapter 6, 4 chariots emerge heading toward the 4 corners of the earth, on another patrol. If you've ever wondered why some angelic scenes in the Bible feel reassuring, and some feel genuinely terrifying, the roster gives you the answer. You're not reading the same kind of being. The type tells you the register. And Hebrews chapter 1 verse 14 gives the summary statement for all of them. Ministering spirits, sent out to serve for the sake of those who are to inherit salvation. All of them. Sent. That's the whole job description in one word. Gabriel announces. Michael fights. Cherubim guard the presence of God. Seraphim worship and purify. The angel of the Lord collapses the distance between messenger and God. The destroyer executes. The patrol angels report. Every category, every function, every appearance consistent with the assignment. There are other ranks the Bible names that we haven't walked through. The sons of God in the divine council scenes of Genesis 6 and Job 1. The watchers, named in Daniel 4. The thrones and dominions and principalities Paul lists in Colossians and Ephesians. The Satan, as accuser in Job and Zechariah. These show up in the text, but they're named more than they're shown. The 7 categories we've walked through are the ones Scripture actually shows doing something. A role you can watch, not just a label applied. That's the roster the text lets you read. And at the very end of the Bible, one of these beings says something that names the whole structure in 7 words. The roster is built, and what it reveals isn't just a list of categories, it reveals a structure. A working hierarchy where different beings hold different functions, different access levels, and different areas of operation. Compare that to the popular image. The greeting card angel with the soft wings and the glowing robe isn't wrong because it's beautiful. It's incomplete because it collapses 7 distinct functional categories into one misleading composite. And when you collapse the roster, you lose the ability to read the signals. You stop being able to know what's happening in a scene the moment one of them shows up. The roster works like a language. Once you know what Gabriel's appearance means, something is being announced. What Michael's means, something is being fought. What the destroyer's means, something is ending. Every angelic appearance in Scripture becomes readable in a way it wasn't before. The type of being is the signal. At the very end of the Bible, after all the visions and trumpets and wars, John falls at the feet of the angel who has been guiding him through Revelation. And the angel stops him, not with majesty, not with a proclamation, just, I am a fellow servant, do not do that. It is the smallest moment in the whole book. One line, easily missed among all the spectacle, but it is the sentence that names the entire system. These beings with 4 faces and 6 wings and flaming swords, who guard the throne of God and fight wars in the sky, they are servants. Every one of them. They have specific jobs. They do those specific jobs. And the whole architecture of heaven, for all its fire and terror, is organized around one purpose. And that purpose is not the angels themselves. The first thing to carry from this is the simplest one. The word the Bible uses for these beings, malach, means the one who is sent. Not the one who glows, not the one with wings, the one who is sent. Every figure in the roster carries that word, and every figure in the roster earns it by doing exactly and only what it was sent to do. Gabriel arrives when a message needs to be delivered. Michael appears when a battle needs to be fought. The cherubim stand where the presence of God needs to be guarded. That's not a coincidence. That's a system. The second thing is what the roster tells you about how to read the Bible's most dramatic scenes. When the angel of the Lord appears in the burning bush, the blurring between the angel and God is not a textual confusion. It's a signal that something is happening at the edge of what the categories can contain. When the destroyer moves through Egypt, The silence is not a gap in the story, it's the register of the roll. Once you know what type of being you're reading, the scene tells you far more than it used to. And the third thing, the one that stays with me most, after all the spectacle, after wheels of fire and wars in the sky and 7 sealed scrolls, an angel stops John from bowing and says 7 words. I am a fellow servant. Worship God. That is the whole roster, in 2 sentences. These figures, with all their fire and strangeness and assigned authority, are not the point. They are pointing. The whole structure, the announcers and the warriors, the throne guards and the worship beings, the destroyers and the patrol riders, all of it points somewhere. All of them are servants, and servants, by definition, serve. If this kind of biblical deep dive is what you come here for, subscribe. There's a lot more of the Bible that looks completely different once you know what to look for.